She was kind, creative, and barely 20. A small-town girl chasing big dreams in the heart of Dallas. But one morning, Shelley Nance didn't show up to class. Hours later, her roommate found her lifeless body, face down in bed, stabbed 42 times. There was no sign of forced entry, no signs of struggle, just silence and blood. At first, all eyes turned to her boyfriend, the shy art student with a thing for knives. But the truth, it was far stranger and far more personal. What kind of obsession drives someone to kill the person their best friend loves? And why did the killer try so hard to make someone else take the fall? Welcome to Whispered Evidence. Today, we revisit a crime fueled by jealousy, deception, and a twisted sense of love. The only question is, was the real target Shelley or someone else entirely? It was just after 11 a.m. when Ashley Olvera unlocked the door to the apartment she shared with her roommate, Shelley Nance. Everything looked undisturbed. The living room was quiet, the blinds half drawn, and no sounds came from the hallway. Shelley hadn't replied to any calls or texts. That wasn't like her. Ashley called her name as she stepped farther in. Still nothing. She walked down the narrow hallway toward Shelley's bedroom. The door was slightly open. She pushed it gently. Inside was silence and blood. Shelley lay face down on her bed, wrapped in her covers, as if she had never expected to be disturbed. Her feet stuck out from beneath the blankets. Pale, still. Blood had soaked through the bedding, staining it deep red, and streaks ran down the edge of the mattress. Ashley staggered back and grabbed her phone. The person she'd laughed with just 2 nights earlier was now motionless, stabbed dozens of times. There was no scream, no struggle, no warning, only silence and a closed door. When detectives arrived, they expected chaos, broken furniture, scattered belongings, anything to explain the level of violence. But the apartment was strangely neat. No shattered glass, no kicked-in door, nothing that hinted at a break-in. Shelley's purse sat untouched. Her laptop remained on the desk. Drawers were closed. Cabinets were clean. There was no sign that anyone had forced their way in or searched for valuables. Whatever had happened here wasn't random. It was personal, planned, and it was quiet. There were no defensive wounds on her arms. She hadn't tried to run. The attack had come fast and without warning, aimed at her neck and upper back. 42 separate knife wounds. Someone wanted her gone. Not scared. Gone. But the weapon? It was missing. The killer hadn't dropped it or panicked. They had cleaned up, walked out, and taken the knife with them. Which raised a troubling question. If there was no sign of forced entry, did Shelley open the door herself? Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button, because this case isn't just about what happened. It's about who was watching and waiting. When the shock wore off and the questions began, attention turned quickly to someone close to Shelley, someone who shared her walks through the college halls, someone who owned knives, a lot of them, her boyfriend. Nathan Shuck was awkward, soft-spoken, and just a few months into dating Shelley. On paper, he didn't seem dangerous, but police quickly learned that he had a fascination with blades and sometimes acted off. Was it love turned obsessive, or was that too easy? Because while everyone looked at Nathan, someone else was even closer and far more invested in Shelley's disappearance. Shelley Nance grew up in Italy, Texas, a town so small that everyone knew when a neighbor bought a new mailbox. It was the kind of place where childhood friends turned into lifelong bonds, and weekends were spent at football games, church events, or drawing in quiet corners. Shelley wasn't loud or flashy. She had a quiet, steady presence, the type of girl who noticed when you were having a bad day and left a hand-drawn card in your locker. From the start, she had an eye for beauty, shapes, colors, emotion. As a teenager, she filled sketchbooks with delicate portraits and whimsical characters. Art was more than a hobby for her. It was how she processed the world. Her parents, Cynthia and Sam, raised her with structure and tenderness. Shelley was the youngest of 3 daughters, the soft-spoken one who loved animals and laughed quietly at her sister's jokes. She adored her nieces and nephews and spent long summer afternoons drawing cartoons just to make them smile. Everyone saw her as the gentle soul, the kind that made people relax without realizing why. But beneath that softness was ambition. She wasn't planning to stay in Italy forever. In 2008, Shelley packed her sketchbooks and left Italy behind for the Art Institute of Dallas. It was a leap, not just in miles, but in mindset. For the first time, she wasn't surrounded by familiar faces. She was in a city where no one knew her name. But maybe that was the point. Have you ever started over in a new place, hoping to finally be seen? Shelley was hoping to be seen not just as someone's daughter or little sister, but as an artist, a woman with her own story to tell. She moved into an apartment in the Lake Highlands area with Ashley Olvera, a fellow student who quickly became her friend. Shelley adjusted to the rhythm of city life, diving into animation classes and refining her digital skills. She wasn't the loudest in class, but her talent spoke for her. Classmates noticed the quiet girl with the steady hand and the warm smile. And then came Nathan. Nathan Shuck was another student at the Art Institute. Shy, socially awkward, polite to a fault. Their connection was slow to start. 2 people who didn't quite know how to flirt, but enjoyed each other's company. They'd sit together at lunch, exchange doodles, talk about their dreams. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was the kind of love that makes your hands shake for no reason. That first unsure kind that feels more like a question than an answer. But Shelley liked him. And for the first time since moving to Dallas, she didn't feel so invisible. Ashley Olvera noticed the change in Shelley almost immediately. The late-night sketching sessions turned into quiet phone calls. Shelley's face would light up when she read texts from Nathan. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle, almost shy. But it was real. To Ashley, they seemed like a pair that just made sense. 2 introverts who understood each other without needing to say much. She once told a friend, "It's like watching 2 baby deer try to date." Their time together was sweet, if slightly awkward. They went to the movies, walked through campus, talked about class. Nothing intense, nothing rushed, just a first love slowly unfolding. But not everyone was happy about it. Ashley began to notice something else too. Someone else. Nathan's roommate, Daniel William, seemed unusually interested in Shelley and Nathan's relationship. At first, Ashley brushed it off. Daniel was loud, dramatic, and sometimes sarcastic. But when he started asking about Shelley's whereabouts and texting Ashley for updates that had nothing to do with him, she started to feel uneasy. Because Daniel wasn't just Nathan's roommate. He was watching everything. Thursday morning, September 10th, began like any other. Shelley had no early classes that day. Her roommate Ashley left for campus around 9 a.m., and Shelley stayed behind in their second-floor apartment, likely still in bed or easing into her morning. Less than 2 miles away, Daniel William was already out and active. Surveillance footage from a nearby Walmart showed him moving through the aisles just after 10 a.m. His shopping list was peculiar: nitrile gloves, Zest soap, and hair dye. On its own, that might have seemed like nothing. but when cross-referenced with his text history, it became more pointed. He had been texting Ashley obsessively that morning, asking where she was, asking if she was at school, asking whether Shelley was alone. He never explained why. By 10:37 a.m., the texts stopped. There was roughly a 90-minute gap. No messages, no calls, just silence from Daniel's phone. That window matched the estimated time of the attack. It would later become clear. While everyone else was going about their day, Shelley Nance was already dying in the quietest room of the apartment. The door to the apartment showed no signs of forced entry. No splintered frame. No broken lock. Whoever walked in that morning either had a key or was let in. Shelley was found lying face down, covered by her own blankets, still wearing a sleep shirt. Her body language told its own story. There was no indication she had moved to escape. No overturned furniture. No knocked over items nearby. Just her still form soaking in silence. The medical examiner counted 42 stab wounds. Most were clustered at the back of her neck and upper shoulders, as if the attacker had struck downward again and again. Shelley's jugular veins and carotid arteries were severed on both sides, her lungs and throat filled with blood. She would have lost consciousness in less than a minute. A few small cuts on her fingers suggested she may have instinctively raised a hand, just once. The killer had worn gloves. A fragment of blue nitrile was later found clenched in Shelley's hand. She must have grabbed for something in her final moment. There were signs someone had cleaned up. The bathtub was wet. The sink and cabinet handles had faint smears of red. The killer didn't rush. They had time to wash, to think, to leave the scene as if nothing had happened. And they took the weapon with them. The two largest kitchen knives were missing from the block. What had started as a normal morning in a college apartment ended in absolute stillness. And one question: who had walked through that door? By Friday morning, Shelley still hadn't responded to messages. Her parents, Cynthia and Sam Nance, were on the road, leaving Texas for a trip to Yellowstone. It was supposed to be a break from routine, a chance to breathe. Before leaving, they sent their daughters a group text, a simple, "We love you," and a prayer for safety. Two of the girls replied. Shelley didn't. The Nances grew anxious. She always texted back. Always. They called her school. They called her roommate. No one had seen or heard from her since Thursday. Ashley rushed home. The apartment door opened too easily, like it hadn't been locked. She called Shelley's name. No answer. She moved toward the bedroom, heart racing. The door was cracked open. Inside, the light filtered dimly through the blinds. The smell hit her first, coppery, sharp. Then she saw the bed. Shelley's feet, pale and motionless, peeked out from under the blanket. The mattress was soaked in blood. Streaks of red stained the floor beside it. For a moment, Ashley froze, hoping Shelley would stir, would say something, would breathe. She didn't. Ashley backed out, hands shaking, and called 911. Her voice cracked as she said the words. "I think my roommate's been murdered." Detectives combed the apartment inch by inch. No broken windows, no missing electronics, nothing stolen. Just one girl, gone, and someone who had gotten in and out without leaving a trail. No neighbors reported screams, no signs of a struggle beyond the bed. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. So the question wasn't just who did it, but how they got so close. Let us know in the comments, who would you suspect if the door was locked and nothing was stolen? Because someone didn't just kill Shelley, they planned it. At first glance, Daniel William didn't seem like a threat. He was older than most students at the Art Institute, 26, a former Navy sailor turned pastry chef, now studying culinary arts. He carried himself with confidence, spoke with flair, and didn't shy away from attention. Daniel was openly gay, known for being dramatic, sarcastic, and sometimes controlling. But he also knew how to charm people when it suited him. Daniel lived with Nathan Shuck, Shelley's boyfriend. Their apartment wasn't just shared space. It was a carefully curated environment where Daniel controlled most of the daily routine. He cooked, he cleaned, he helped with laundry. He even drove Nathan to and from school, since Nathan didn't drive. To outsiders, it might have looked like an older friend taking care of his younger roommate. But Daniel wasn't just being helpful. He was watching. Closely. Nathan was timid, soft-spoken, and relied on structure. Daniel provided that, but it came at a cost. Over time, Daniel's presence shifted from supportive to possessive. Friends began to notice that he treated Nathan less like a roommate and more like property. He hovered. He managed Nathan's time. And when Shelley entered the picture, Daniel's patience began to fray. She had changed something. She had taken something. And Daniel didn't like being replaced. Daniel didn't keep his opinions about Shelley to himself. Within their circle of classmates, it was no secret. He disapproved of Nathan's relationship. He said it was distracting, said Shelley was immature, that Nathan's grades were slipping because of her. But it wasn't about grades. Daniel began probing for information. He messaged Ashley Olvera constantly, asking whether Shelley was in the apartment, what time she'd be home, if she was with Nathan. It didn't seem like concern. It felt like surveillance. Ashley grew uneasy. Every conversation with Daniel seemed to circle back to Shelley. At one point, he even suggested Ashley talk to her roommate, try to convince her to spend less time with Nathan. Daniel framed it as being helpful, but his fixation was becoming hard to ignore. He didn't just dislike Shelley. He wanted her gone. The question was, why? Was Daniel in love with Nathan? Maybe, but it was just as likely he feared losing control. Nathan depended on him for rides, meals, structure. Shelley was an interruption, someone Nathan chose freely, someone Daniel didn't manage. What started as a roommate arrangement had become a one-sided emotional attachment. Daniel wasn't sharing Nathan's time anymore. He was competing for it, and Shelley was winning. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. Instead, he watched, calculated, waited for the right window. And when he thought no one would notice, he made his move. But that wasn't the only thing he did. He also left a trap. When police searched the apartment Daniel shared with Nathan, they found something chilling in the guest bathroom. A clear plastic baggie sat on the counter. Inside, strands of long hair and small blood stains on the outside of the bag. The blood matched Shelley Nance. So did the hair. To detectives, it looked like a trophy, or a message. At first, suspicion snapped to Nathan. He'd had a collection of knives, an awkward demeanor, and a possible motive. Shelley had reportedly been thinking about breaking up with him. But Nathan was rattled, confused. He swore the bag wasn't his and had no idea how it ended up in his bathroom. Detectives started to wonder, what if it had been planted? And then Daniel spoke up. He told a strange story. Said he had gone to the same apartment complex where Shelley lived that morning. Claimed he was there to see a friend. According to him, a stranger had approached him with a knife and robbed him, taking his backpack full of clothes. It was an odd detail. A backpack full of clothing? Even odder. Daniel never reported the mugging to police. When asked to describe the man who robbed him, Daniel was vague. He said he didn't get a good look. He said it didn't matter. It felt more like a script than a memory, and detectives knew it. Daniel's story wasn't holding. His movements didn't line up. And if that bag was meant to frame Nathan, they were starting to see exactly who had placed it there. Nathan had no alibi for the morning Shelley was killed, but he had no history of violence either. No motive that held under pressure, and none of the confidence it would take to clean up a crime scene and walk away. Daniel did. He had motive, opportunity, a timeline that matched, and he had inserted himself just enough to look like a concerned friend, while quietly shifting suspicion onto someone else. Detectives were beginning to realize something unsettling. The person they feared wasn't Shelley's boyfriend. It was his roommate. The biggest break in the case didn't come from DNA. It came from retail. Detectives pulled security footage from the Walmart closest to Shelley's apartment. There, on the morning of the murder, just after 10 a.m., Daniel William walked through the automatic doors alone. Surveillance cameras followed him as he moved from aisle to aisle, his phone in hand. He was texting someone while shopping. His items? A box of nitrile gloves, a bottle of Zest soap, a box of hair dye. The timestamp placed him at the register at 10:16 a.m. The items seemed innocuous, until investigators compared them to the forensic evidence found at the crime scene. The killer had worn gloves. The blue fragment gripped in Shelley's hand was a near-perfect match to the nitrile gloves Daniel had just purchased. Soap residue was found in the bathroom sink. The tub had been recently used. 2 large kitchen knives were missing, possibly used, possibly taken as part of the escape. It wasn't just what Daniel bought. It was when he bought it. At the same time Daniel was shopping, he was also texting Ashley Olvera, asking where she was, asking about Shelley's schedule, prodding for confirmation that she was home alone. Then the messages stopped. From 10:37 a.m. to 12:03 p.m., Daniel's phone went silent. That same window, Shelley stopped responding to texts. That silence didn't just happen. It was timed. As the evidence began to stack, detectives turned their attention to Daniel's history. What they found painted a disturbing picture, one that predated Shelley Nance by years. During his time in the Navy, Daniel had been disciplined for erratic behavior. At one point, he requested to be removed from his ship, not because of stress, not because of injury, because he feared he might stab a superior officer with a kitchen tool. It wasn't an idle comment. It was documented. He told military officials he had intrusive thoughts, violent impulses he couldn't always control. Later, after returning home, he had what his own family described as a breakdown. In one outburst, he used a samurai sword to destroy his brother's room. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a thread that suggested a volatile undercurrent, one that had never been fully addressed. On the outside, Daniel was charismatic, capable, composed. But underneath that, he was a man accustomed to controlling his environment and melting down when that control slipped. And in his world, Nathan Shuck wasn't just a friend or a roommate. He was something Daniel needed to feel in control. Shelley Nance represented a threat to that balance. Her presence made Daniel feel invisible, discarded, irrelevant. The emotional math for him was simple. If she stayed, he lost Nathan, so he made sure she wouldn't stay. When questioned later, Daniel didn't confess. But he did say something that stopped everyone cold. They're going to come for me anyway. Why? Because I hated her. Daniel's behavior after the murder only raised more suspicion. He dyed his hair. He threw away clothing. He claimed his backpack had been stolen during a robbery that no one witnessed, and that he never reported. When pressed, he changed small details, contradicted himself, deflected questions. His roommate Allison Morales later told investigators that Daniel seemed agitated in the days following Shelley's death. At one point, he told her plainly, "I think the police are going to come for me." When she asked why, his answer didn't even hesitate. "Because I hated her." And still, Daniel acted like a concerned friend. He checked in on Nathan, played the role of support system. He even suggested the killer must have come in through the back patio door, planting doubt, as if by habit. But it wasn't enough. The timeline placed him at the crime scene. The shopping list matched the forensics. The glove in Shelley's hand matched his purchase. The planted evidence in Nathan's bathroom? He had access. And the only motive anyone could find was jealousy. Daniel hadn't snapped. He had planned. He'd masked obsession as friendship, manipulation as care. And the murder wasn't just about Shelley. It was about control. The kind you lose when someone else takes the person you think belongs to you. If this were a movie, you'd think it was too obvious. But real life? It's often darker than fiction. In November 2011, more than 2 years after Shelley's murder, a Dallas County jury delivered its verdict. Daniel William was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. He would be eligible for parole, but not until he had served 30 years. When the sentence was read, Shelley's parents sat motionless, not from surprise, but from the exhaustion that only grief can teach. Justice had arrived, but it hadn't brought their daughter back. During the victim impact statements, Shelley's father, Sam Nance, spoke first. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. That part of him had been buried with his daughter. He said he felt nothing anymore. That even when their family dog passed away shortly after Shelley's death, he couldn't shed a single tear. "I didn't even cry," he told the court. "Not because I didn't care, but because I'm empty." Cynthia Nance took the stand next. Her voice didn't shake. Her anger didn't hide. She looked at Daniel and said, "I hope you enjoy your time in jail, and I hope you develop a conscience while you're there." Then she added something that stunned the courtroom. "I hope you die there." No one objected. No one had to. The room had already absorbed the weight of what had been lost. Daniel sat expressionless. But the jury had seen enough of him. The life he tried to erase would be remembered longer than the sentence he'd serve. Back in Italy, Texas, the town didn't just mourn Shelley. They remembered her. At Italy High School, where Shelley had once walked the halls with sketchbooks in hand, her former classmates and teachers gathered to plant a tree in her memory. It stood in the courtyard, young but rooted, much like Shelley had been before she left for Dallas. Next to the tree, a framed portrait of her smile reminded everyone what had been lost. In May 2011, the Ellis County Art Museum hosted a one-of-a-kind exhibit. Titled Shelley Nance, A Celebration of Art and Life, it showcased her drawings, digital pieces, and character designs. Visitors wandered through the gallery in silence, taking in her talent, her sense of whimsy, her attention to detail. Every single piece had a butterfly hidden in it. It was her signature, something she did just for herself, something no one realized until she was gone. Shelley had always loved butterflies, symbols of freedom, change, and delicate strength. In her DeviantArt username, in her school projects, in her notebooks, there was always a butterfly. Her family leaned into that symbol. They established a memorial scholarship in Shelley's name for graduating seniors who wanted to pursue the arts. It was more than a gesture. It was her dream, passed forward. Every spring, one student is chosen, not just for talent, but for heart. The scholarship still runs today, and in every submission, somewhere in the corner of the page, a butterfly appears. It's a quiet tribute, one Shelley would have appreciated, because she never needed attention to feel seen. Even with the verdict, not every question was answered. Did Daniel William truly love Nathan Shuck? Or was it never about love at all? Some believe Daniel's actions stemmed from a twisted form of obsession. Romantic, maybe. Others thought it was control. Nathan was his project, his routine, his structure. Shelley disrupted that. She made Nathan laugh in a way Daniel didn't understand, and instead of accepting the change, he erased the cause. But that's the hard part, isn't it? Shelley didn't even know she was in danger. She wasn't confrontational. She didn't argue with Daniel. She simply existed, kindly, quietly, in a space where someone else thought she didn't belong. So was her murder really about Nathan? Or was it about Daniel not knowing who he was without someone to orbit? Shelley Nance died because someone else couldn't manage their own emptiness. And that's the part that never stops hurting, not just for her family, but for everyone who hears her story. She didn't fight. She didn't get the chance. But what she left behind, a laugh, a sketch, a signature butterfly, is still reaching people, still making noise. And if you've made it this far, you're one of us. Like, comment and share this story, not just to spread awareness, but to honor Shelley's life. What do you think this murder was really about? Control? Obsession? Or the quiet kind of rage that hides behind a smile? Let us know below, because Shelley deserves more than a headline. She deserves to be remembered.